The illusion of safe fashion. Imagine standing in front of your brightly lit bathroom mirror on a weekend morning. You use a gentle facial cleanser, apply some moisturizer, and maybe a little concealer to hide a tiny blemish. If you want to be a bit more edgy, you might visit a clean tattoo studio, smell the sterile rubbing alcohol, and let an artist use a sterilized needle to ink a small quote on your wrist. It stings a little, but you know you are completely safe. Now, throw that bottle of expensive lotion away, erase all concepts of sterility, and rewind time about 40,000 years. Welcome to the beauty industry of the Stone Age. A place where fashion wasn't about strutting down a red carpet, but a bloody performance to assert status, and the price for looking stylish was often paid with your life. In the modern world, beauty is about enhancing delicate features, but in prehistoric times, beauty was a visual arms race. You didn't dress up to look cute, you dressed up to look like the most terrifying apex predator in the forest, or to prove to the entire pack that you had unparalleled physical endurance. The torture of tattoos and scarification. Let's start with humanity's very first tattoos and scarification art. The concept of a tattoo parlor back then was actually a freezing cold rock ledge. Your tattoo artist was a tribal shaman with massive, rough hands smeared in animal fat and mud. His tools! Not an electric tattoo machine, but a razor-sharp piece of flint that was just used to slice wild boar meat the day before. This beauty procedure was unbelievably brutal. The shaman would use that rock to carve deep gashes into your chest, shoulders, or face. As the blood began to pour out, he would grab a handful of ash from a dying campfire or red dirt mixed with animal fat and rub it vigorously straight into that open wound. The goal was to intentionally cause an infection, making it swell up so that when it healed, it would form massive, rugged, permanent keloid scars on the skin. Why would our ancestors voluntarily endure this horrific torture? There was no anesthesia, no antibiotics, and the chance of a blood infection was almost guaranteed. The answer lies at the core of evolutionary biology. In a world where a simple scratch from a thorn could lead to death, voluntarily creating dozens of deep wounds, rubbing dirt into them, and still surviving, was the ultimate, undeniable proof of your immune system. Those scars were the perfect prehistoric resume. They screamed to the opposite sex, "Look, my immune system is godlike! Have babies with me!" It was a survival flex of the highest order. The Russian roulette of piercings. And if scarification wasn't cool enough, let's talk about the art of piercing. Piercing the nasal septum, or stretching the earlobes, was the high fashion of many primitive tribes. But they didn't have silver studs or surgical steel. Their jewelry consisted of the fangs of predators, the shin bones of small animals, or pieces of hardwood. Punching a hole straight through your nasal cartilage with a rough bone awl in an environment crawling with bacteria was a game of Russian roulette with the Grim Reaper. The area around the nose and upper lip is known in modern medicine as the triangle of death on the face, because the blood vessels here connect directly to the brain. A trendy Stone Age nose piercing gone wrong would quickly turn into a purulent brain infection, sending that prehistoric fashionista straight to the afterlife in a matter of days. Haute couture versus apex predators. But if piercing was risky, draping yourself in high-class couture carried its own physical dangers. Prehistoric clothing wasn't measured in sizes S, M, or L. It was measured in pounds. The greatest chieftains or warriors often draped themselves in entire grizzly bear pelts or heavy necklaces made from hundreds of saber-toothed tiger fangs. They looked incredibly majestic and powerful. However, there was a fatal flaw in this fashion sense. These status symbol garments were incredibly bulky, heavy, and restrictive. When a pack of starving wolves unexpectedly attacked the cave, the common guy wearing a flimsy loincloth could easily scramble up a high tree branch. Meanwhile, the respected chieftain, weighed down by 30 pounds of bear fur and tooth necklaces, would quickly realize that haute couture does absolutely nothing for your aerodynamics when you're running for your life. Sometimes, the price of power was becoming the most eye-catching, slowest, and most protein-rich target on Mother Nature's dinner table. Toxic makeup and the red obsession. Finally, let's talk about makeup technology. The origin of all modern cosmetics is red ochre. Our ancestors were obsessed with the red color of blood. They crushed this mineral, mixed it with saliva or rancid animal fat, and plastered it all over themselves from head to toe. It acted as a primitive sunscreen and insect repellent. However, depending on where they dug up that dirt, their foundation could be packed with toxic heavy metals like lead or arsenic. Countless prehistoric humans slowly poisoned themselves through their skin just to maintain the tribe's standard rosy complexion. If you thought rubbing toxic dirt on your skin was extreme, wait until we talk about permanent bone alteration. Because for some tribes, having a regular healthy human body was just too boring. To truly look intimidating, attractive, and distinct from rival tribes, many prehistoric humans aimed for the predator smile. Having flat, herbivore-like teeth didn't scream, "I am a fierce warrior." So, what did they do? Using nothing but rough stones, pumice, and a terrifying amount of patience, individuals would intentionally file their healthy front teeth into sharp, jagged points. Imagine that process for a second. Imagine the sound of a crude rock grinding against your bare tooth enamel for hours. Think about the exposed nerve endings screaming in agony with every scrape while you just have to sit there on a rock and take it. The ultimate goal? To flash a smile that made you look like a walking great white shark. It was a cosmetic dental procedure guaranteed to give you chronic toothaches for the rest of your short life. Also, you could look edgy at the tribal bonfire. But the most mind-boggling and terrifying beauty standard of all didn't start in adulthood. It started literally days after birth. Welcome to the practice of artificial cranial deformation. Some prehistoric and ancient cultures looked at a normal round human head and thought, you know what? That's just too basic. To signify elite status, tribal identity, or perhaps a connection to the gods, parents would take their newborn babies, whose skulls were still soft and malleable, and tightly bind their heads with heavy animal skins, thick cords, and flat wooden boards. Over months and years, the relentless pressure would force the growing skull to expand upwards and backwards, resulting in a massively elongated, alien-like head. This wasn't a temporary haircut. This was reshaping the literal architecture of the human skull. It was an incredibly dangerous gamble. If the binding was tied just a little too tight, the pressure could cause severe brain damage, seizures, or kill the infant outright. But if the baby survived this agonizing process, they got to walk around for the rest of their lives with the ultimate, unmistakable VIP head shape. No one could ever fake your status because your elite rank was permanently molded into your skeleton. Talk about suffering for fashion. The luxury of modern beauty, prehistoric beauty standards were not a frivolous hobby. They were a ruthless manifesto of strength, endurance, and the ability to survive. Everything they wore, every scar they carved into their skin, carried a life or death message. So, the next time you feel a pinch in your wallet buying an expensive serum or wince at a tiny nick while shaving, remember the luxury you possess. You are living in an era where looking good doesn't require rubbing campfire ash into open flesh, and a nose piercing won't send you to an early grave overnight. Fashion always requires sacrifice. But luckily, today, that sacrifice only applies to your credit card, not your life.